Hi there, welcome back to Sunday's edition of IndyCar on the 25th of February. It's going to be a bit of a packed programme, this, because I haven't managed to do another broadcast since Thursday, so let's buckle up and go for it. BBC Scotland on its website this morning led with a story about another female minister in the Scottish Parliament taking maternity leave, and according to their headline, as well as Kate Forbes, she would be the second such Scottish minister to take maternity leave. My question is, why is this a headline, and why is the fact that she's the second woman to take maternity leave even newsworthy? And I think the answer to that is implied in the article, that somehow being female and accepting a ministerial post and having a baby is somehow not good, is somehow a fault or a crime or something which shouldn't happen. But just because Scotland actually has progressive rules regarding women in positions of authority, such as government ministers, doesn't mean that this is a bad idea. What it does do, though, is it highlights the fact that this doesn't happen very often in Westminster. In fact, I've been struggling to think of any recent female ministers in the Westminster Parliament who've taken maternity leave at all. And it begs the question, what is the BBC trying to say here? That the Scottish Parliament or the Scottish Government is somehow failing in its duty? That having a female minister who decides to take some time off because she's having a baby is a bad thing? Should there be only male ministers? What is the point of this BBC insinuation? And that is, I think, just an insinuation. It gives the impression that there's a queue of women in Scottish political life who are queuing up to take time off work just because they want to have babies. This isn't the case, and it is a basic human right for every person, every adult person, including men in Scotland, to have time off when their first or second child or third child arrives, to be with their family. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, everything to do with this is right. It is Westminster that's the one which looks embarrassingly behind the times, as usual. Now, speaking of embarrassing times, the Telegraph led with an article today about how the English Heritage Organisation is viewed internationally as a national embarrassment. And they cited the case of a planned tunnel to be built beneath the ancient monument of Stonehenge. This to apparently allow the traffic, which normally rumbles past in the distance, to pass underneath the monument unseen and unheard. But of course it's run into all kinds of objections, because nobody is absolutely certain what is under Stonehenge in the first place, and digging a tunnel under an ancient monument is fraught with difficulties, as they've discovered with HS2 when they dug tunnels under the scenery there, and sinkholes have started to appear in the countryside. So if English heritage is an embarrassment, well, how does that leave Scottish heritage? Well, it's pretty good. You don't hear of Scottish ministers discussing the idea of digging tunnels under ancient monuments. In fact, we keep the traffic well away from them. Anyway, that leads me to what is being reported as a Scottish success story. Now, there are several citizen reporting channels on the internet. Many of them do great work, and this one produced an article about the success of Scottish shipbuilding and its rosy future. Now, I'm not denying that the article was accurate. It was entirely accurate, and it showed that Scottish shipbuilding had a good future. Most notably, they highlighted the cases of both Rosyth and the shipyards at Govan and Scotstoun, which have order books which are, well, bulging with new military shipping. And also the fact that Babcock is investing in Rosyth, and BAE Systems, which runs both Govan and Scotstoun warship yards, is investing in a new shipbuilding academy, all of which are good things. Nobody's denying that. This is great news, because it means more shipyard workers will be trained properly, and there will be a centre of excellence. It also goes on to mention, now this is something I didn't know, I'm not sure if you knew this either, but the troubled yard at Ferguson's, which has been in the news almost constantly because of the problems with the 2 ferries they were building, which the contracts for which were largely bungled by an intermediate arm's-length company representing the Scottish Government, which changed the specifications of these ships to dual fuel in order to make them a bit more environmentally friendly and cause all the overruns. Well, after all of that, what is now being suggested is that when things are quiet, which they inevitably will be, I guess, after the 2 ferries are constructed and finished, that the staff who would normally be surplus to requirements or unable to work because there's not enough orders at Ferguson's would be seconded to Govan Shipyard to help build these naval vessels. Now, this is also being touted as a major success because it ensures that the Port Glasgow yard at Ferguson's will continue even when things are quiet. Now, all of this, I'm not denying, is good news for the people who work there. That's not the issue I'm trying to raise here. But what I would suggest is that every single success story, if you like, in Scottish shipbuilding is being manufactured by the British arms manufacturing businesses, BAE Systems and Babcock's, who do nothing but military work. And it means that all of Scotland's shipbuilding success stories, including this new academy, are all being provided by the United Kingdom defence procurement businesses of Babcock's and BAE Systems, which leaves companies such as Ferguson's trailing on the coattails of these 2 massive organisations, which are international, multinational corporations supplying arms and ships and missiles and everything else all over the world. Is it a success story? Yes, it is. But does it make Scottish shipbuilding entirely dependent on British military procurement? Well, I think that's the implication here, and it's something which worries me greatly and endangers, I think, the independence of commercial shipbuilding at yards such as Ferguson's. And it means that they're no longer independent. They're now going to be dragged away from civilian shipbuilding whenever Govan or Scotstoun require some extra staff. But having said that, yes, it's good news, and the article is well written, and it is a Scottish success story, but again, it makes us dependent on the United Kingdom. That brings me back to, unfortunately, without being able to make a segue into this story, Sir Keir Starmer. Now, people have asked me for my take on the situation of what happened in Westminster in recent days regarding the SNP's motion for a ceasefire, which included the words that Israel was taking, I think, what was known as, collective punishment on the people of Palestine, or in this case, the people of Gaza. Now, the insertion of these words obviously seemed to annoy the Labour Party. Now, the Labour Party was bound to be annoyed by this because they're trying to take a pro-Israel stance in this entire situation. And we all know that Sir Keir Starmer lent on the former Labour MP and, at the present moment at least, for the time being, the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Now, Lindsay Hoyle allegedly was bullied or browbeaten into allowing the Labour leader to both sabotage the SNP's motion for a vote on a ceasefire. Now, this would have been a message from the entire United Kingdom that there should be a ceasefire, to basically scrapping the entire thing and removing the SNP's right to this motion. Now, they had an opposition motion day specifically for this SNP motion to be voted on. Labour has effectively sabotaged that by bullying a man who is meant to have no political affiliations at all. And it is alleged that Sir Keir Starmer bullied, maybe not the right word here, but threatened Sir Lindsay Hoyle would no longer be the Speaker of the House when Sir Keir Starmer took office if he wins the next general election. But what was missing from this was a piece of information which surfaced today, and that is that Sky News did an interview of Sir Keir Starmer about what happened before he sabotaged the SNP motion. And it's come to light that Sir Keir Starmer was heard admitting in this particular interview that before he decided to take this action and to sabotage the SNP's motion for a vote, he spoke to none other than the leader of Israel. He spoke to President Netanyahu, and he's heard admitting this, and yet in the Sky broadcast which went out, that piece of the Vox Pop interview was cut and was never seen. So make of that what you will. Now, other sort of, I would say, more alert people on my in my audience have been challenging my view of the fact that all Scottish MPs and MSPs are required to swear an oath of allegiance to the King before they can take office. And I had said that I felt that this made them feel obliged, if you like, to maintain the Union and not to threaten it in any way. However, it's been pointed out to me, and I'm quite happy to accept I was wrong on this occasion, the actual oath itself is only to support the King, is only to swear allegiance to the King and his heirs and successors, and in return, of course, the King, who is now supposed to be the King of Scots, has to swear an oath of allegiance to the Scottish people, acknowledging their sovereignty in the claim of right, which the King is required to swear an oath to uphold. And so this is the compact between the Scottish people and the King of the Scots. Now remember, the King of the Scots in the Scottish law is only there because the people of Scotland allow him to reign, if you like, allow him to be the king, and he can be removed. So, technically speaking, and I'm quite prepared to admit I was wrong here, this does not place an obligation on any Scottish elected official of any party to support the Union. In fact, people have challenged me on this and went on to say that, in fact, there is nothing to stop any SNP, Green or ALBA MPs or MSPs at all from challenging or defying anything that the United Kingdom Parliament decides to enforce in Scotland. It's just that they're choosing to interpret this oath as meaning they are not allowed to do so, or some other form of pressure or threats of some sort are being made quietly in the background by somebody from the United Kingdom, which is causing them to fear doing so. Nobody really knows if that's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me if people's careers hadn't been threatened if they took this sort of action. One final piece of news which emerged today and went under the radar, like a lot of such stories, is that the United Kingdom, you'll remember that the Tory policy on illegal migration, I'm saying illegal migration in inverted commas here, is that anyone who arrives illegally by boat in the UK is forced, obviously, if they're applying for asylum, to wait until their asylum hearing has been, either accepted or has been refused. They're either going to be accepted as asylum seekers, as legitimate refugees fleeing torture or rape or warfare or whatever. However, what is missed from the news story is the fact that 253 people, boat people, people who have desperately tried to get to the United Kingdom in rubber dinghies, 253 of them have actually been charged with helping in people trafficking, simply because they were offered a lower fee by the people traffickers if they steered the boats, if they had technically their hand on the tiller holding the outboard motor. And one person, in this case a 15-year-old boy, was given a 15-month sentence because they said he was steering the boat. And he said, well, if that's the case, then all 30 of us in the boat are guilty, because just because he had his hand on the tiller doesn't mean he wasn't an asylum seeker, and didn't mean that he should be prevented from having his asylum hearing in the usual way. But instead of that, as I've said, 253 such people have actually been jailed for simply being in the boat and holding the outboard motor, even though they're not actually people traffickers themselves. And this has been a way that the UK has sought to remove asylum seekers using a law which would really only apply to the actual people smugglers themselves, the traffickers who are organising the boats, and instead of which criminalising the very people who are being victimised by them. So, in all, the news, as usual, is a mixed bag. The BBC is trying to paint Scottish female politicians who take maternity leave in a bad light. English heritage is an embarrassment, according to the Daily Telegraph. Scottish shipbuilding is a huge success story, but is entirely dependent upon the military procurement of the United Kingdom. So Keir Starmer appears to have been assisted in some way by Sky News by not broadcasting the full extent of his interview, where he admitted to speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu before torpedoing the SNP's Gaza ceasefire vote in the Parliament. And finally, this oath to the King, which our politicians are required by custom and practice to swear allegiance to the King before they take office as Scottish ministers or Scottish MPs or Scottish MSPs, does not require them to blindly support the United Kingdom Union at all costs. They can, if they wish, decide otherwise. They can defy, they can refuse to cooperate, and yet they choose not to do so. Anyway, that's it from IndyCar today. Sorry, it's been a bit of a packed programme. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, if you're still here. And I hopefully will see you again later in the week when I have some more to report. In the meantime, that's it from IndyCar today. As usual, keep the faith. Independence will be along soon, but it's going to be up to us to make sure these politicians who've sworn an oath to the King don't use it as an excuse to do nothing for the next few months. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.